Okay. So to continue with the exceptions, if you recall, I mentioned that you can throw your own exception and create an exception and throw it. So let me. Exceptions, you can throw them by using the throw statement, and we have seen the out of range exception, which was created by the code we have written, and then you can create this exception and generate an exception based on the statements present in the said exception. So IOExceptions is a key part of the exception class, which again might be useful for your projects and implementations. So you probably will need to implement some sort of an IOException. And if you look into the IOExceptions, these are checked exceptions. So they are part of the checked exceptions. So you have to definitely make sure that these are caught or sent to the up higher levels. So you have to make sure that it's done. So in the files, what we do is that we deal with a stream, which is a sequence of bytes that flow from a source to a destination. It's like a river stream, or the water streams. It's like a stream that starts from one location and also all the way continues to the end of the destination. So you have a stream that is generated for file processing most of the time. So you open a stream and send the data, and the other end receives this data at the end. It could be a file, it could be, for example, a node in the network that you're sending the stream into. So you generate a stream, and it starts from one end and flows to the other one. So you can have multiple streams simultaneously to operate on. So in files, usually we use the streams to manage things in an efficient way. So if you look into the standard I/O, what we have is normally the standard output, system out, such as the one we are using, system out.println, is going to print it on the window that's available to you most of the time. And then the standard input, which is the keyboard usually, system.in, is defined by Java, and you can easily read the input from the user. And then the error, which is again going to generate an error statements on the screen as well, and finish the execution. So system.err indicates the erroneous state and generates errors. So we already have been using system out println, and also the system.err typically represent the specific monitor screen, specific window on the monitor screen, and we again said that system indicates the keyboard that we are using. So in IOExceptions, you may have a case where the file does not exist. So if the file does not exist, you need to give an exception. Or if you're not able to open the file, or for some reason you're not able to write into it, or you cannot read it, and so on and so forth, you may have exceptions that you need to check for the I/O inputs and outputs for the files that you have. And as I said earlier, IOException is a checked exception. And if you look into the text files, what you need to do is that you have to first open the file, right? Then you're going to generate a stream that is going to operate on the file, and then you will be able to write. The file writer class, which is used for text output, however, you're given a minimal support for playing around with the data, and other file operation classes exist in Java, so you can use different file operation management classes for the same reason. So you can use the print stream objects, which have the print and println methods defined to use within the file system that you have. And if you look into the test data.java example, we have the streams used specifically for implementing and accessing files. So let's see test data.java. And if you look into here, as you see, you're including the java.io to operate on the IO library package, available methods. We use the io.star. And if you look into here, what it does is that, as you see, public static void main throws IOException. Why do I need this throws IOException? So normally, as I said earlier, this is an IO exception, is an checked exception. So you have to definitely either check it by try catch, so you have to have a try catch statement, or if you do not catch it by a try catch statement, you have to throw an IO exception saying that, hey, I am aware of that I'm operating on files, I'm operating on IO, and it can generate an exception. However, I'm not catching it, so I'm letting you, the parent guy, whoever is calling me, deal with that. Okay, so the method, the caller, whoever calls this, is going to deal with the exception. That's why it says throws IO exception. So if I happen to delete this throws IO exception, what's going to happen? So as you see, there's no try catch here. So if I try to compile it, as you see, it says unreported exception java.io.io exception must be caught or declared. So either you have to try catch it or use a throws statement indicating that, hey, I know this exception may occur, but I'm not dealing with it. So I'm just ignoring it. I'm letting the caller to deal with this. In this case, since this is the main method, if an exception occurs, it's basically going to give an error and exit. However, if you had a parent method which was calling this method, would have to deal with that exception in that case. Okay? So it just indicates that there's a possibility that there's an exception, IO exception may occur. However, I'm not trying to catch it in this method. So if you look into here, as you see, the file name is given as string file test.dat. So it's the file name that is going to be used. It's only a string at this point. However, if you see the file writer, which is a class that is available within the IO class, IO package, FW is the name of the variable, and then you create a new file writer file. So basically, you are giving the string test.dat here as a file. So you could just copy that and use it there, right? So you can just, instead of this, or so if I copy here, it's the same exact thing. So you're creating the file writer test.dat, and then you have a buffered writer BW, which is creating a buffered writer into the file, and then you have a print writer method, which is creating a printing method onto the buffered writer. What do we use for buffered writer is because you may want to optimize things by using buffering. What buffering does is basically, whenever you have a method that is writing into a file, and then here's your file. If you're writing character by character, let's say, what is going to happen is that normal writer without buffering is going to write one character, and then let's say it will write the next character afterwards, and then it will write the next character afterwards. So buffered writer basically deals with this in a different manner. So it collects everything here before going into the file. It collects everything here on a separate buffer so that it has the C, A, and T written here, and then it writes them at once into the file. So that's what the buffer is used for, and that's called buffer. So the idea, what's the advantage of using something like this? Why do I need to use this? Not exactly. You cannot, the only thing is you can do is you can just cancel the buffer and restart over again, but you cannot really manipulate the buffer. That's not the primary reason for. The main reason is because operating with files is accessing the disk, for example. You need to go to the disk, and if you have many data that you're writing on, this is going to be really slow if you go write character by character, open, write, and write again, and so on and so forth. So instead of that, what it does is that it collects everything at once in a buffer and then writes it at subsequent, phases. So once it's, let's say, 1 kilobyte size, it writes it, and then another collects another 1 kilobyte and writes it again, and so on and so forth. So it basically collects the data and then in a buffer and then writes it onto the file that is associated with the buffer. So that's what basically it's used for here. And if you look into the for loops here, it's basically creating a random generator as RAND, and then for int line equals 1, line less than max, and then number equals 1, number less than max, it generates an integer up to 90, from 0 to 90, and then adds 10 to it, and just prints these numbers over and over into the file. Out file dot print, and then you have value plus an additional spacing. So basically what it does is that it writes into the file by out file dot print, as if you're writing into system dot out, right? So it's exactly the same. However, in this case, you're writing into the file instead of the output screen of the user. Okay, and then it is going to add a print line statement after each, iteration, so that you have, what's this going to print? If you look into the max value, max is equal to 10. What does it do? It basically generates for each line 1 to line 10, it generates 10 numbers within this randomly, and then writes them right next to each, and then goes on to the next line. So it's something like, or let me run this and then show you the file. So output file has been created, test.dat. So it's basically, if you go open this test.dat, as you see, it is this generated. So you have 10 numbers on each line and 10 lines, and it generates random numbers. For example, this is useful if you need to generate random data for your implementation. You can just write it in the proper form and just generate it and write it on a file and use it on words. Okay. So all the numbers are, as you see, in 2 digits because they used 10 plus the random number here. So let me show that. So 10 plus, so that it's always greater than 10, and then less than or equal to 99 every time, since this will generate an 89 at the most. Okay, the most important thing is that once you create the out file, the most important thing is that you need to close it. Okay, out file close. So you have to close it. If you do not close and try to open another out file with the same file name, you're going to create problems, which is going to generate exception, IOException. So you would like to close it whenever you're done. So always, if a few of your friends came to me asking about problems in their applications, and we debugged the problems. So with once at least, what we have seen was they forgot to close the file, and then they were getting all these problematic errors and things like those. So you would like to always close the file if you're done with operating on it, and not open 2 streams at the same time for the same file. So you're not supposed to open one stream that is writing here and then open another one that's trying to write onto the same file. You can't do that. Okay? So as it says here, output streams should be closed explicitly. So you have to close them, make sure that they're closed. So to go on to some of the GUI things again, this is all about exceptions. However, as I said earlier, it is it's possible to have a question in the final exam using exceptions and how to handle exceptions. So be prepared for that. And if you didn't understand, we can talk further on. If you consider the tooltips, what's a tooltip? It's basically a small text that's appearing on a button or on a component that indicates what this is for. So if you remember the applications, whenever you come on top of an application, it shows what it is for. A tooltip is assigned using the set tooltip text, and you can just add for the buttons, for example. Whenever you come on towards a button, you will be able to see what it is for. For example, I will show you this or maybe all of them are at once, so let me open that up. Light bulb panel. Light bulb. So as you see, it wasn't this example. No. Yeah. Okay. Now this is the actual tool tip, but for some reason it takes a while to turn it on. This is the tooltip, so it appears that, okay, you need to wait for a while. Okay, so this is a tooltip, and if you want to add for any component, you can do that by going here. As you see, let me open that list panel. Not this one. Light bulb controls, probably here. Okay, yeah, this is the on button, set tooltip text, turn it on. So you can set the tooltip text by enabling this text part. Whatever you would like to add there, you can add that specifically. Okay. If you consider the mnemonics, what's a mnemonic? It's a keyboard shortcut. Whenever you would like to have a button, instead of a button, you use Control-N, Control-S, Control-Z, and those shortcuts. That's called mnemonic. And then if you look into the example here, you see that here F is selected to be the keyword for making it off. So if you press, I think, Alt F, it will change it to on and off. So I will, you can just play around and make a Fenerbahçe, color. So this can be set by set mnemonic on button, set mnemonic, and then you have N, which indicates that it's going to be the mnemonic for that specific thing. And then you can use various components. Here it uses F for the mnemonic as well by set mnemonic method. So you need to select the character from the components label, and it will be underlined. So it should be part of the components label such that it will underline the corresponding one. And if it doesn't exist, it will just ignore it and will not assign anything to it. Okay. You can use it by Alt and then the corresponding key, whatever that is. And as I said earlier, you use it by set mnemonic method. Button set mnemonic, and then the C is selected there. So you can also set certain things disabled.
Son sayfada C string'ti, önceki programda çağırdı, onun bir önemi var.
They probably have written it wrong here because it is supposed to be a character.
Bir de mesela bir sayfadan diğerine enter'la geçmek istersek o bunda olmuyor da herhalde. O da var mı? Anlatacak mısınız?
Nasıl?
Hocam mesela orada on-off yazıyordu ya, sadece enter'la almak istiyoruz. Hani enter'a bastığımızda o kısmı çalışsın yani. Üzerinde hangisi seçiliyse o enter'a bastığımızda alsın istiyoruz.
You have to implement a different thing for that. You cannot capture it with enter directly.
O zaman keyboard listener falan.
Keyboard listener, you need to use keyboard listener to use it with enter. Because that's not a mnemonic. You need to use Alt and the corresponding key for that. You have to use a key listener to do that. Also, if you want to disable a certain element, you can disable it by using button.setEnabled false. Normally, everything is set enabled as true. However, you can, in starting the application, you can set it to be enabled to false. In which case you need to explicitly indicate that set enabled false method calls this. So if you look into this example, where is this enabled and disabled happens? So normally this button is disabled, however this one is enabled. So if you want to enable this, whenever you click Alt F, it is off, it can be on the next time, which makes this enabled. However, this one is becoming disabled by the set enabled method. If you look into here, initially you have the set enabled button for the on as false, since the button is, since the bulb is on at the beginning, it starts with an false or off disabled on button, whereas the off button is enabled. To start with, one of them is enabled, the other one is disabled. Right? So let's light bulb panel, light bulb controls, and then light bulb. So everything is not here. Light bulb panel. So if you look into here, lightbulb.java, basically, whenever, let me execute it again. Whenever you execute this, what do you have here? Basically, you have the light bulb, which must be on a panel, and then there's these two buttons, which are also on another panel, and then you have spaces in between, which is set by what method? What we were using? The rigid area, right? So you have the public, the frame, new frame light bulb with the title, and then you have the exit operation, and you have the light bulb panel bulb, new light bulb panel. So you create the light bulb panel, which shows only the light bulb at the top, and then you also have another controls panel, which is extending light bulb controls, is extending J panel. So you have the controls panel. Basically, this is extending J panel. So we will see the details of it. However, it's component that's extending J panel. And if you create the panel, the new panel, then what you do, you set the background to color black, and then you have a layout for the panel that you created, which is new box layout panel, and then box layout y-axis. Right? So you're creating a box layout for the panel, which is going to be on the y-axis or vertical dimension. And you have panel add box create rigid area, new dimension 020. So you create a small area for this at the top, and then you add the bulb, which is the component, the bulb component, and then you add another rigid area, the empty space, and then add controls, and then add another rigid area. That's basically the bulbs, this rigid area, another rigid area, and another rigid area, and in between you have the bulb and the controls. And that's basically pretty much everything about the light bulb. So we need to see first the bulb, which is light bulb panel. So let's go see. This is basically extending the J panel, and as you see, there are two images, light on, new image icon, light bulb on dot gif, and then you have light off, new image icon, light bulb off dot gif. So it creates those images, and you can use them from this point on, and then set background to color black, so that whenever you have the image on top, the background will be same as the other panel. So there isn't going to be any problem in terms of the visual scene. And on becomes true, so that the boolean is set to be true. If you look here at the top, you have a boolean variable on, which indicates whether the bulb is on or off. So initially it starts with true, and then image label, new J label, light off. And you have the add image label is going to add the label onto the panel. And if you look into the paint component, basically it calls the super paint component to get the panel ready. And then if the bulb is on, image label set icon light on. However, if it is not on, image label set icon light off. Okay, so this boolean will tell you whether you will put the on light or off light. As you see, it is done in the paint component. And when you look into the set on method, basically what it does is that public void set on boolean light bulb on. If you give true, it will set the on to true. If you give false, it will set this on to false. Basically, it is just setting whether the bulb will be on or off. So when you look into this lightbulb.java again, as you see, we have the bulb, we have seen that, and then now the controls. If you look into the controls, basically in the controls part of the light bulb, you have this panel, right? This is the controls, where the controls are. And if you look into that part, you have on button, which is the new J button on, and we set the enabled to be false such that it cannot be clicked at the beginning since the bulb is going to be on. And we have the mnemonic set to N, and the tip text is set to turn it on. And then you have an on listener, which is basically going to listen to these button clicks, and then based on that, it is going to decide whether to select which image and what to show on the screen. And you have the off button, same thing, but the only exception is that this is false, whereas this is true, because you can turn the button, turn the light off. And you add these two buttons, on button and off button. And the most important thing here is that on listener, private class on listener implements action listener. So if the user performs an action by clicking, action performed, based on this, bulb set on will be true. Remember, set on method was setting the bulb's Boolean variable to true or false. In this case, set on will set that on variable to true, and then on button will be enabled false. Why enabled false? Because bulb is already on, so you cannot turn it on again, right? So it's becoming off. The button itself becomes false. And then off button set enabled true. Since it can be turned off, you make that off button enabled true, and then you call the repaint method. Why am I calling the repaint method? To redraw everything from scratch, such that I will show the on bulb and then also disabled button and enabled off button. And if you go below, you see that off listener implements action listener. So it's basically going to do the same thing for the off button. Bulb set on false, on button set enabled true, just the reverse, and repaint everything. So whenever I click, if I click to the off button, it will execute this part. If I click on button, it will execute the on listener part of the same application. So basically this is all about this bulb example. So again, this is off, and whenever I click, it calls the action performed and performs this action. Any question? Combo boxes. Combo box, as you may know, what's a combo box? It provides a list of items for you to select from if you need to, choose something out of the menu that's available. So the currently selected will be shown on the combo box, and whenever you press using the mouse, you will be able to see them. You can add the add item method, or use a string of array of strings and include them at the beginning initially, or you can add them one by one using the add item method. And also the JukeBox basically is using a combo box, and whenever you select one of the combo box's elements, items, it generates an, as it is said, action event. So you can check for the action, and then you can perform whatever task you would like to do. So let's see the JukeBox. This is an interesting one. Have you tried this before? Did anybody try these examples? No? Not interesting? Okay, so this is the whole application, but let me... make a selection. So let's say Western beat. It's playing actually, but you can't hear it. So if you want to play the classical blah blah whatever, you can select the corresponding WoW sound file. You can just open it and play it. So that's what it is doing, and you can stop and play again and again. So normally what this does is basically, as you see, it creates the jukebox, which is only using the jukebox controls panel. So let's see that jukebox controls panel. if you look into here, it's using the Java applet audio clip. So this is already available, which is used here as a package. So you're not really dealing with the sound files and their internal implementation. So it gives you the audio clip package as a whole, and you just create an audio clip array, which is called music, and then audio clip current, which indicates the current music that you would like to play. And if you look into the combo box, so you have the JCombo box music combo, which is going to give you those options that you're selecting from. So this is the combo box that we are selecting. The current selected one is this one, for example. So this is called a combo box. So what are the things that are present here? So you have a basic panel on the back, and then you have a label, and you have the combo box, and probably another panel that is composed of these two buttons. So if you look into the JukeBox controls constructor, as you see, URLs are defined initially as null. What we mean by URL? What's URL? What does URL mean? What is the longer term for URL? Not user. Anybody else? Universal. Resource locator, right? URL indicates the universal resource locator, which means you can identify a location that could be a specific file in your directory, in your files, or that could be something that's available through internet, or something that is accessible by giving an address. In this case, it is using the local host, and it gives a file which is, the name is going to be this file. So it's going to look into the same class as the class file and find this wow file to locate as the URL. Also, you could have given, instead of localhost, you could have given a specific internet address and access a specific URL as well. Okay, so you can use this for various other things. As you see, it is creating those 6 files, URLs or file locators, and then catch exception. As you see, it has a try catch. If you get rid of this, so for example, if I happen to get rid of this, so what's going to happen? What will happen? Unreported exception, as you see, unreported exception, malformed URL exception. So you have to catch this URL exceptions. Although you are not doing anything, as you see here, are we doing anything with the catch code exception? No, we are not doing anything, but we are indicating that we are aware of the exception possibility, and we are just leaving it out by the try catch statement. Okay. Either you could have, you need to do this, or you need to say, hey, this one throws, in the implementation, extends JPanel, throws, blah, blah. So you need to give the throws. In that case, you can get rid of the try catch block. So once I created these URLs, so if I happen to not find the file, it's going to give me an exception and exit the method, right? So if I cannot find one of these files that is given with this name, it's going to not be able to find it and raise an exception. So let's get rid of this W and try to do it. Did it compile? Let's see. Yes. JukeBox, and then let me rerun it. What was the name of it? Western Beat. JukeBox. Why it's not giving an error? It is supposed to give an exception, right? Did we compile it? How can it play it if the file doesn't exist? Eastern beat. So if you look into the files here, let's see if the file exists. So as you see, Western beat exists, but Eastern beat does not. No. Anyway, it needs to give an exception here. Catch the exception. Oh, okay. So it doesn't, since it's catching the exception, it doesn't do anything here and then continues with the next sequence in line, right? So it will not be able to actually play anything. It is supposed to not play anything. However, it will continue with the rest of the application because you're not performing anything. However, if you have written something such as exit -1, it needs to exit the whole application. So as you see, you create these music 0 equals null, which is used for corresponding to make a selection option, and then it creates all these other music entries with using the file names, the URL locators, and creates the audio clips. And if you look into the title label, it creates the top label at the top, Java Jukebox. So if you see, this is the label that is created at the top, right? And then you have the string music names, which is basically a list of strings. And you have the list here, make a selection, Western beat, classical melody, and so on and so forth. And the combo is generated by using new J combo box music names. So it gives an array of strings as this one. So it will add one after the other one into the list. So if you add one more, it will be appended at the end of the list in the combo box. So if you look into the combo box, this is where it is actually selecting each string and making it as a separate item. Or you could use add item to add more items to the combo box. And if you look into this music combo set alignment, so it's going to basically set the alignment of this component to the left of, so component.center alignment, center, it will be aligned this onto the center of the parent class. So that's what it is doing here, music combo set alignment. So it's in the center location of the combo box. And then as you see, play button, you have the two buttons for the new J button, play new image icon, play.gif. So it takes the image onto the button, which is shown here. So let me show you that. Play.gif. Play.gif. Ignore nerede?
Altta bir daha göstermesin.
Open with Explorer is better option. Okay, so this is the image for the play.gif, and also you have this the other GIF image for the stop. So you see this is for the stop. So it basically puts all these onto the label. So you have the play.gif and stop.gif, appearing on the buttons of the application. And if you go here, you see that we created those two buttons with the set mnemonics P and S as we did before. and we create the buttons panel. Obviously what we do, we add the play button and stop button into this panel, and we add a rigid area in between those two buttons by creating a box layout with x-axis. So we add those buttons onto that. And the last thing that we are going to need to do is, we will add all these onto the main panel. So basically we will have the title label added, music combo added, and then the buttons added at the end, which is going to, add all these components. The last part is going to be music combo, add action listener, and stop button and play buttons, action listeners. So if you look into this, for combo listener, it implements the action listener as we did before. So you have the action performed. If current not equals null, current.stop. If there's something playing, let me first stop that, because there's a new combo item is selected. Whenever the user selects a new item from the combo, it will first stop the current playing one, if there is one, and then start the new thing. Make the new music to be equal to current equals the music array, the audio clip array at the beginning we defined, to the music combo get selected index. Whichever is selected, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, it will get that index and then get that music, the audio clip, specifically assigned to the current. Why do we have this initially null for the first one? So if you go here, no light bulb. So yeah, here the first one starts with null, because if you make a selection, it is going to get this index and it will try to access music 0, which will create an error. You could have solved this problem by simply starting with the first one and then subtracting one from the selection, right? It was easier actually, but they have preferred to do it this way. And if you look into the remaining part of this, the only thing that is left is the combo listener implements the action listener, and we selected the corresponding music. And then if the user presses either play or stop, what's going to happen is that if current is not equal to null, current stops. So if there's a music that is currently playing, let me stop that first, meaning that your first stop. And then what you're going to do is that event get source is play button. If the play button is clicked, what are you going to do? You will basically, if the current is not null, you will start playing the current one on the music, right? So you'll just basically stop it in any case and start it if the user pressed the play button. So both of the buttons implement this, because you can merge the operations of both of these buttons into one action event. Any question? Scroll panes and split panes. So if you have an image or a text area that is too big to fit in the screen, that's what scroll pane is going to be used for. And it provides a limited view of the current thing that you have enabled there. You can use vertical and horizontal scroll bars to scroll within the image or whatever you have as the text file. And there's no listener, so let me show the transit map, and this will be the last thing that I will show you today. So let's see what was the transit map. So I have the scroll pane. Let me include that too. No. So this is the scroll pane. Basically, there is an image that is big enough to fit in the screen, so you can scroll down and right. This is a transit metro map of Philadelphia, so you can just scroll through the stations and everything. So if you look into the code, you see that J frame, frame, new J frame, septa transit map. So you create the frame, you set the default operation, and then you create an image by image icon. So you create an image icon object, and then you create the label that is, that is with the image on top, and you create the scroll pane, J scroll pane SP with the image label. So it's basically going to include this image on the scroll pane, and the preferred size is set to 4500 by 4000, and you add the scroll pane onto the content pane and show it on the screen at the end. Okay, so this is basically a scroll pane which might be again useful in your applications. If you happen to need it, you can use it. So it's a useful object. Any question? Okay, so I will see you next week.